Welcome to the Recovering Perfectionist Podcast, where I empower you to develop sustainable habits, challenge society, and take messy action. I'm Christine, life balance coach and world champion ballroom dancer, and I believe that everyone has the power to create their very own life by design. The Recovering Perfectionist Podcast was created with a mission to encourage a life of abundance by finding peace and acceptance in our own imperfections and developing healthy self-love through sustainable habits and manifestation. It's time to align with the universe for the full human experience and redefine what it really means to be successful.
It's too good, the secret is out and wow.
Welcome back to the Recovering Perfectionist Podcast, and I'm here with Courtney Ostrowski, and she is wearing all the hats, just like all of us entrepreneurs, but I'm just loving seeing it. And this is the second time that we've had a conversation, because the first time I was a guest on her podcast. So very, very exciting. I'm so excited for you to meet her. Courtney, thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me. I'm so happy to be here and to connect with you again. We had such a great conversation.
We did. Yeah, it was actually, so to get a backstory for our audience, for those of you who can hear, my voice is not what it was. I lost my voice this weekend. I was at a dance competition. So we were like yelling over music to clients. My husband has a digital media business. And we were selling photography, and amazing weekend. That's when Courtney, you and I snuck away for a minute. We got to have a fabulous conversation on your podcast called The Unique
Way.
Right?
Yep. The Unique Way.
The Unique Way. Right.
Mm-hmm.
Unique Way.
Mm-hmm.
Fabulous conversation, all fun things. Mm-hmm. Guys, go check it out. I'll link it down below. But yeah, now we get to do the reverse. I'm so excited to talk to you about what you do. So go ahead and introduce yourself for our audience, Courtney.
Awesome. Yes. And thanks again for having me. So my name is Courtney Ostrowski. I live in Charleston, South Carolina. I love it here. I have 10 minutes from the beach, and Charleston is just such a charming little town. I am a yoga teacher. I host international retreats, and I mentor yoga teachers, and I have privates and workshops and all of that good stuff. I also am the host of like a group coaching course that's not necessarily local. It's online. It's from women all around the world. And that is a huge focus of my work. I love working with women. At my program, Craft Your Path, is like a 6-month commitment. And I love that time with them, because I feel like you really start to see sustainable change when you have a chunk of time together like that. So that's a big focus. As you mentioned before, I have the Unique Way podcast, which is so much fun. I also am a human design reader and a massage therapist. I mean, I do a lot of things under that umbrella of wellness and self-discovery and spirituality. And other than that, I love nature. I love sunshine. I love animals. I love people. And I am a quintessential Gemini. I love to talk. I love to make friends. I love to read books. So that's a little intro for me and who I am.
I love that. A huge word that stuck out for me, which, since we did me as on your podcast, is sustainable. I love that you said sustainable change. That's not something that a lot of people are using in the wellness space. A lot of people are using that in the climate space. And I just did a live in my group on Facebook called Beat the Burnout. We did a live yesterday of my 5 steps to building sustainable habits, because that's what I teach. Is I specialize in sustainable habit building. What about, I would love to know your take on sustainability in creating your personal growth and wellness journey. What does that mean to you to make something sustainable?
Yeah, for me, I think a big piece of that is consistency. So, and also accountability. So when you're working with me for 6 months, you're having weekly check-ins, that accountability to hey, you've shared what your goals are, but what are you doing to get there? And how can I serve you in making that happen? So I think really boils down to consistency and accountability. And that's why I love coaching. I personally have like a business coach, and that's so helpful for me. And that's also why I love to be a coach to these women, because it's like, they kind of have goals in their mind, things they want to do, places they want to go, and how they want to be in the world. But having the goal is one thing, actually. And we mentioned this on the podcast when I interviewed you, like having the systems and the processes and the consistency and the accountability to actually get there. That's a whole nother ball game.
Totally.
So I think for me with coaching, it really boils down to that consistency and accountability. And it's really magical. And I think, as a coach, like I'm a part of it, but I'm like 10% of it. It's like these women investing in themselves, showing up for themselves, doing the work. Like I'm just kind of the bonus, and so I don't like to really take any credit, it's all them, and it's so exciting, but it is fun to be a part of it, and to also create this sacred container where women can come together and feel seen and heard and safe to share and to be vulnerable and to kind of have each other to get feedback and to collaborate and to get ideas. And it's a really fun way to work with women and to actually, to your point, see that sustainable change that doesn't happen overnight.
No.
Things can happen overnight, but they don't often stick. Right. So I used to teach shorter courses, and I was like, this is great. But when I did a 6-month course with my coach, I realized having that extra time was a game changer. So moving forward, that's basically the shortest container that I will work with someone in, 6 months. And it's flowing.
It really sets the tone for, how you can create that change and really dive deep into it. Otherwise you feel rushed. I do the same thing. I'm currently in a second program with my business coach. And I love it. I just love working with him. Same thing. It's about a 4-month one, but I mean, yesterday, we had a call, and same thing. We feel so safe. Like there's certain things like numbers, money, deep secrets, I guess, just like vulnerabilities, that you just feel like you can just share there. It's like, it just feels so safe to be in those types of containers. So I totally agree with you.
Yeah. And something that we talk about in yoga a lot is like you build muscular and cellular memory through repetition. So it's like, it's through repetition, through consistency for that longer period of time. That's how you actually can create those healthy habits and sustain the changes and, all the things that you want to do. So yeah, we're very much on the same page there. I loved your 5 steps that you mentioned in the podcast. I think that's
thank you.
So awesome. Such an awesome framework.
Thank you so much. Yeah, we actually went, like I said, we did the live yesterday with my my friend Maggie, my coworker. We worked together and created the group and the course, and we decided to do our live training yesterday on my 5 steps. And what's so cool, for those listening, I'll link that, group live training in the sorry, I'm like losing my train of thought here.
In the show notes. Yes.
In the show notes. Hello. I'll link it in the show notes. But what's so cool about what Maggie did is we've partnered together to create an online 12-week, same kind of thing that what you're doing, like a container to build, it's really to transform your life. It's for mostly we target entrepreneurs, but we also want to help people to stop cycles of burnout and to not feel stuck anymore and to feel like they have answers to move forward. So what she does is she focuses on self-worthiness and trust in yourself and all of the emotional, like how I feel kind of thing. How am I feeling? And I focus on the logical. And we just noticed that yesterday. We've noticed it along the way, but yesterday when we were discussing my 5 steps, the logical side of what I do, she said, yeah, you're always talking about what I do or whatever. And I always talk about how I feel. And I said, yeah. And it blends so perfectly because I have my steps and I explain, my proven method of how it works and how you can create these sustainable changes without dropping off in February, creating these resolutions that we all do, And she puts in there all of these extra like feelings and the flexibility of it, and just really understanding it from a deeper perspective and filling in the gaps. It was just fabulous. So yeah, it's thank you for saying that. It's it's a very good time. Yeah.
It seems like you'll have a very nice contrast, which
Very
is nice to balance out.
Yeah.
It almost to me feels like kind of the balance of the divine masculine and the divine feminine, right? There's like, we need the structure, but we also need the flow and creativity. So that's a cool partnership that you have.
It is. And we realized that a lot of her clients need my work and a lot of my clients need her work. So it just blended really nicely together. And so that's why we can kind of create, this amazing transformative deep work that people can do in this course. So talk to me about, we were discussing like, the things that you do with your women and, bringing out this feminine energy and all of this stuff.
Yeah.
I think this is actually a very interesting place to go, because being a woman myself, I am growing up, I was in an industry in ballroom dancing that really the only differentiation between men and women in our industry is on the dance floor. Is you see a beautiful woman, in a sexy dress, looking as feminine and dancing feminine, and you see a man acting like a man and being a paso doble or doing something, whatever. But off the floor, when it comes to like how hard we work, the competitiveness of it, the jet lag, the traveling, the training, that's all like everyone's on the same level. And women go through monthly cycles, we go through emotional hormonal changes, we go through all these things, and that's never discussed in our industry. So we just, it's like a very black and white situation. There's no gray area. So for a while, it was something I actually enjoyed, because I saw all these women that were not in my industry growing up that were very emotional and very dramatic. And this is not a judgment. This was just what I was observing, and very just, feeding into, oh no, I have my period, so I'm going to be out for a day. And I was like, oh, I have a competition tomorrow. There's no out for a day. Right. And then as I got older, in my, I would say late 20s, I started feeling like I couldn't ignore that anymore. And also I had slowed down in competing. So I wasn't needing to maintain that level of intense athleticism, which allowed my body to kind of create more, of this feminine energy. And if I'm being completely honest, it messed with me majorly, because I didn't know how to handle it and I was not prepared to handle it. So now, being a wife, I'm 32, I'm very excited about life and everything, but I'm definitely having to restructure how I work, because I used to just go all the time. And now there's certain days where I give myself grace and take days off and all that stuff. And that's also part of the recovering perfectionist concept of what I do. But what I want to discuss with you is how you help women really feel powerful in those moments where we don't feel powerful, where we have this, we feel like it's a weakness, because that's what I've felt most of my life, is that, I just wish sometimes I just wish I was a guy. Like, I can't stand that I have to deal with this, or that I have to go through this, or, that we have to deal with pregnancy and all. Like, we always get the short end of the stick. You know what I mean? Even in birth control, like, we're the ones that have to do all the hormonal stuff. Like, it's just really annoying to feel like, and my mom, I had this conversation with my mom, and she goes, that's so funny. Like, you complain so much about being a girl. Like, I've never heard someone complain so much about being a gender. And I was like, for so much of my life, I felt like it wasn't an issue. It wasn't even discussed. It wasn't even brought up in my life, because I just did what I needed to do. And now I feel like it's like, I'm having to relearn how to be a woman.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying? So I would love your thoughts on that.
Yeah. Well, thank you for so vulnerably sharing, because I think a lot of women can really relate to what you're saying, and they're feeling less alone, or less like, am I the only one?
Right.
And I also, growing up, I had this idea of like, women can be competitive and catty and dramatic and all of this. Like, I had to really work through my own conditioning as well to get to a place where I have really healthy feminine relationships and a good, like I had to really work on even the relationship with my mom and all of that. There's a lot of healing there.
Same.
And I think, we have this feminine wound because of growing up in a patriarchal society where the norm is the masculine and the norm is harder, faster, stronger. The norm is not natural for our femininity. And it's like, we have created this idea that going slow is wrong and having a period sucks. And, there's so much conditioning around why we have all like this burden to carry and all of this. But what I found is when you actually live in alignment with your divine feminine energy, you start to see these things as actually what a gift. And when you lean into your own natural rhythms and cycles of your body, you actually tap into potential and power. When we work against the way our energy wants to naturally flow and be expressed and try to be something we're not, meaning put ourselves in a masculine box, it's like we're actually limiting our potential and we're not able to access power. And so part of my group coaching course, working with women, is helping them to unleash that feminine power and potential. And I like to use the analogy of water. Like water, you can think of water being, it can be very soft and fluid and it flows. And it's like, if you think about like a creek or a lake or a pond, like it's chill. There's a lot of ease there, but water can also be a tsunami or a hurricane or an iceberg. And that is like, hopefully I'm okay saying this, but unfuckable with.
It's totally.
It's like, it's like water can also be very fierce. And I like to use that analogy for our feminine power. Like, don't mistake our fluidity and ease with weakness. Actually, we can harness that and be incredible forces in the world, but it's like, we've not been leaning into that feminine way of living, right? Because again, we live in a patriarchal, more masculine society, and we need both the feminine and the masculine. Like, I love the masculine. I appreciate the masculine. I have some very masculine characteristics, which is probably why I'm very interested in this stuff, because it didn't come naturally. I had to learn it. So kind of the nature of my program is you can just do the group, like go through the trainings and the monthly, like every month, usually we have a guest expert and like what I call like a training. Then we have a group coaching call. And then we have bi-weekly inspiration where I'll share relative books or podcast ways to kind of go deeper into the topic of the month. Or you have the option to do that and add one-on-one coaching with me, where we really get like nitty gritty and we speak to what you desire the most support around and how to really integrate what we're learning. And some of the themes, I actually have the modules here. Some of the themes that we'll cover is like embodied movement, how, and I mean, you as a dancer, about this, like how powerful it is when you're in your body and you're just, you're so in the flow, like that is a lot of women are afraid to be expressive in their body, or they've been told you can't do this, or you got to look like that, or you know what I mean? It's like, I want women to break free of these boxes in which society has placed them, or family or partners or what have you. We'll also talk about how to unlock and understand your intuitive gifts. We'll talk about human design, living in alignment with your energy type, transformational breath work, which is super, super powerful. The Akashic records, relationships and dating, working with your cycle. And this is something really cool. We might have briefly touched on this when I interviewed you, but I actually like have an app. It's called Flow, FLO. And it tells you like there are different times of our cycle in which we have high estrogen or low estrogen, or we're ovulating or we're menstruating. And so learning how the cycle and like your hormonal system is changing through the month can help explain sometimes why we have like no energy or we're supercharged. And like, so learning how to like understand, and you don't have to like radically transform your life to like live in alignment with your period necessarily, but at least just understanding like, oh, this is why I'm feeling this way. I'm not crazy. Maybe I just need a little bit of rest today. Or it's like, just being in conversation with your body and the intelligence of your body and just really it's a journey of understanding what I'm calling it, your feminine genius, right? The things we aren't taught in school, the things that, we haven't necessarily been allowed to tap into. And one of the modules I didn't even mention is sexuality and sensuality. And, I think that is a huge source of power for us as women, but we live in a society that has kind of allowed two different expressions of the feminine. One is the maiden or the virgin, and the other is the mother. And anything else is considered a whore or bad, or it's not been allowed in the tribe. If you think back hundreds and hundreds of years. And so I'm here to say there are many expressions of the feminine. There's the wild woman, there is the crone, there is the priestess. There are so many expressions in feminine divine archetypes that can maybe really relate to how we feel, but we've never been allowed to step into that and to express it. So it is my goal with this course to really empower women, to educate women, to inspire them to tap into their feminine genius and to just be in a place of curiosity and learning and connecting with other women. Because I think a lot of women feel a little isolated too. If they're, we get older and we have our relationships and our families and all the things, and we have responsibilities. And sometimes it's nice to just feel like you have a community. And so long story longer, that's what I do.
That's awesome.
And I really get lit up about it. So I'm very much excited that it will start January 5th or 6th. And it's just, the doors open just twice a year. So I would love for anyone that's listening, that's interested, to join, to have a conversation with me in the DMs or on email. Like, I love to share this stuff and love to work with women. So
yeah, definitely. How, you brought it up, and I love having conversations like this, that kind of discuss the things that nobody feels comfortable discussing. And one of those things is sex. I don't know if you've heard of, the Pink Company. I think it's Cindy is her name, who created the female Viagra.
Oh, wow. I don't think I'm familiar.
She's the first ever. She was on Ashley Graham's podcast, Pretty Big Deal.
Cool.
She created she sold her company for $1 billion. She was the first woman, I guess, to do something like that. Cindy something. I'll have to look her up again. But anyway, I listened to her podcast, that she did with Ashley Graham, and it was phenomenal. And she talked about how exactly what you're discussing, the way that society, suppresses female sexuality. Yeah. And how they expect us, you have a lot of women. She's had so many women come to her because she worked in the pharmaceutical industry for a very long time. And she constantly saw all these products. There's so many products for male Viagra, right? Or male sexual enhancement, drugs. And she said there was nothing on the market for women. And you saw so many women that felt like they were broken, or why don't I have, a healthy sex drive, or why, all of these things. And she felt like, she eventually got to a point with all of her studies in science and biology and all that it came down to, a chemical in the brain. It all comes down to things like that. Everything's interconnected, but, it's been a while since I listened to this podcast, but it was all essentially, the overview of it was coming down to something like that, and how she was able to create something. She funded it herself because nobody would give her funding because she was a woman. They're like, you're never going to sell that. That's not going to, and also she felt like it wasn't about them thinking she wasn't going to be successful with that product. It was more that they didn't want women to have a healthy sex drive. She said she felt like they were stifling women and saying, really, it doesn't matter how women feel during sex. It just matters how men feel. Right. Yeah. And so that's something that I think, again, is not heavily discussed, especially in marriages, when you see these men who have these high sex drives, whether it's, drug related or not. I feel like women are expected to be the mother, the work, now a businesswoman, have their own personal life, and, make sure you're still keeping your mental health sane. And, and you need to be, a crazy, sex, wife person. And it's like, that's not like, how do we do it all?
Yeah.
How do we,
Yes. I'm just nodding my head like, yes. And it is crazy. Back to your whole point on even like Viagra for men or sexual enhancement drugs for men, which this is even kind of mind blowing to me, that a man's insurance will pay for Viagra, a sexual enhancement drug, but a women's insurance company won't even pay for tampons or things that we need monthly for our health. Like it's just, and that's, again, it's just like the patriarchy that we've lived in. And, again, taking it back thousands of years, women in their power were a threat to the patriarchy. Women in their power were a threat to someone that was more dominant than them, or, you know what I mean? Like, and I think old paradigm is like that more patriarchal framework. It's hierarchy. It's the man is above the woman. And I think we're moving into a new paradigm where actually we're all equals and we have equal gifts to provide. We have, like equal energy, we have equal value, and so I'm like really into where we're shifting as a global community. And to your point about sexuality, I think it is something so taboo. And that's why I like talking about it, because the more we talk about it, the less of a stigma it has. And sex is something that can bring us, like personally or with our partner, an amazing amount of pleasure, or it can bring us a lot of pain if we don't understand our body, or we're not listening to our body, or we don't have the education or the understanding of how to even engage with our partner. And I don't know if you've heard about this new Netflix series called Sex, Love, and Goop.
Oh, absolutely. I've heard about it.
Okay, good.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Well, so one of the what would you call it? One of the guests, was like a big highlight of the show. Her name is Jaya, and her husband was actually, and the co-founder of their method, the Erotic Blueprint, was on my podcast. And we got to talk about, all the different erotic blueprints. And so I know you mentioned that you loved the book, The 5 Love Languages.
Love it.
This is very similar, but it's basically your erotic language. So some of us are very sensual, like myself. I need all of my senses to be stimulated. I love candles that smell good and soft sheets and massage oils and all of that, like really turns me on and gets me into a zone where I want to make love, right? Some people are more sexual or more kinky or are more energetic. Like there's a lot of there's 5 different ways of which we are able to tap into our sexuality according to their framework. And I really love that, because it gives you an understanding of like, oh, this is how I operate sexually. And that's how you operate. How can we meet in the middle? And sometimes it's like, I think for women, like, it's not that you have like a chemical imbalance or need to take a pill. It might just be like your lover doesn't ever touch you. He just comes in for the or just creating gratification. There's no foreplay, or there's no intimacy. It's just sex. Like women tend to want more intimacy and more connection. It's not just the act. Right. And I think sometimes men, not all, but some, they want to like hit it and quit it.
Totally. Or just like you said, creating the right environment. Do you know what I'm saying? Like wear candles, different things. And that doesn't mean like, I can just hear a bunch of men, listening to this going, oh my gosh, I know women always have to be wooed and, and all that stuff. And they need all these things to make this happen. It's like, no, it's all part of the experience. It's kind of like exactly how we talk about when, the way that I describe it to men is when my business coach is a man, and he's always talking about putting yourself in the right environment for success.
Yeah. Yes.
And anytime he talks about, if you're you want to be a millionaire, surround yourself with millionaires. You want to, you want to build a business, you make sure your inner circle is full of entrepreneurs. Or if you're not liking your, physical environment because of the weather, because of, the people around you or the political stance, then move. Right. And I'm like, okay, well, that is exactly the same way when it comes to sex. You're not going to feel inspired. You're not going to feel sexual if you're not, in, like you said, the space that is appropriate for how you operate. And I think that's great. I'm going to have to look into that documentary.
Yeah, look into it. And anyone can take a quiz for free, but like and some men actually enjoy that stuff, but they're so conditioned that like a real man, in quotes, just wants to do it this way. Right. And so men are living in the conditioning too. And so I think when we can all break through the conditioning and unlearn the ways we've thought we should be, whether it's sexual things or just like work things, like, like, I think it's just great for us to also even just have a language to understand our sexual needs and how to express them to our partner. And I loved about what you said about like surrounding yourself with people that you aspire to be. One of my teachers says proximity is power. So put yourself around like the environment, the people, the leaders in which 100%. You want to rub elbows. Another one of my teachers says, there's not a seat for you at the table, make one. And so like, he talked about how one time a guy was picking him up from the airport, and the guy recognized him and knew that he was a big runner. And he was like, you know, he took the opportunity to invite him to go on a hike or a run. And the guy took him up on the offer, and then he ended up becoming friends. So then he invited him to dinner, and then he made business connections, you know? So it's like completely other tangent there, but I think it's also so important. Totally. To your point, to like, be mindful of who you're surrounding yourself with and the environment that you're in.
Absolutely. Yeah. That just across the board. I mean, listen, I was born in France, and my parents moved us to the United States when I was about 2 years old. So I still speak French fluently. Thank goodness.
That's awesome.
My parents instilled that in me, but we moved to Kansas City in the middle of the United States, where my mom's family was based. And, you know, great place to grow up. I will say that, you know, good school, good, you know, community, families around. I had a lot of friends to play with, you know, good family oriented, city, had a lot of art, you know, all that kind of stuff. But weather wise, you've got terrible, blistering cold winters. You've got, you know, very humid, hot summers. Also politically, you know, it's very close-minded, I feel. And again, that's not, for those listening, it's not a judgment. It's just where I felt like I was not being heard. And also, you know, my brother and we always wanted to do big things. My brother when they would tell my brother, what do you want to be when you grow up? And he was a dancer and an actor and all this stuff. He goes, I want to be famous. I want to be a celebrity, you know? And then eventually he was like, well, I want to be an actor, you know? And a lot of people would just look at him and be like, oh, that's great, you know, and wouldn't know how to continue the conversation, because that was not what people became in that area. They would become teachers or, you know, lawyers or, you know, things like that. And nurses, a lot of them were nurses, and which is amazing. Those are all so, you know, such admired professions, but they would look at him like, yeah, okay, well, only, you know, 1 in a million make those. And so good luck with that. And I felt like people weren't open-minded to even that being a possibility, you know? So as soon as we could leave, we found out, you know, that there's places in the world that never have a winter and you never see snow. I'll tell you, if I never see snow again in my life, I'll be totally fine.
Me too.
You know, and just understanding that, like, you don't have to stay where you grew up. There are other places in the world that can make you feel inspired and creative and bring out that power like in you, that, like we were talking about, that genius. And I think environment plays such a huge role that most people don't even realize. They're like, well, I just, you know, there's a pandemic going on and I feel anxious, and, you know, I'm not around, you know, people that maybe I should change my friend circle, or I don't have a healthy routine. And all of these things are valid. That might also be the answer. But I think a lot of people ignore the environment, you know, variable. And if they would just even pick up and move for a year somewhere else and be like, let's try it. And then they can go right back to where they started. Because I always told my friends that wanted to come out and move from Kansas City, I'm like, listen, try it for a year and see what happens. I said, you'll just miss a few birthdays. You'll go back. It'll be exactly the way it was. It's not going to change anywhere. It's not going anywhere. And so I always say, take the risk, do it, because you'll regret it if you don't. And it could change your entire life, and probably will. And if nothing happens from it, or you realize you can't hack it, that's what ended up happening to me. I went to LA first, and I could not hack it. And it was draining my bank account. It was draining my energy. the dating pool was not what I expected. Everything was just not working for me. Thank goodness I found my salsa community, my salsa dancers. But other than that, I wouldn't have, it was just not for me. So I went back to Kansas City, and sure enough, everyone was exactly the way they had been, and in a comforting way. They were there to support me. It was like, we got you, don't worry. You know what I mean? It's like, come back to your safe space. But then I found Las Vegas, and Las Vegas changed my life. And so sometimes I always say, you're not going to hit the bullseye on the first try. Don't give up.
Yeah. I totally agree. And I think about like being in an environment that's conducive for your growth, similar to like, if you were trying to grow a plant and it was in, a cupboard with the door closed, it wasn't getting sunlight, it wasn't getting right. It's the same thing. It's like, totally. We can plant the seeds and set the intentions and have the goals, but if we're not in an environment that's conducive for our own growth, nothing's going to happen. And sometimes it takes moving that plant to the window, maybe to another area of the house. Right. That's like, don't just try one thing and then give up. Like sometimes you have to, pivot and move around. And our stories are so similar. I grew up in a very small town in North Carolina, always felt like I was ready to get out of there and live large and see the world and do big things. And I actually made my way to Orange County and lived there for 1.5 years when I was 19. And it was life-changing. And everything I do now and who I am now is because of that trip and learning about food and the healing arts and getting into massage therapy. And that put me on the trajectory to find yoga and like everything. So I'm so grateful for, I was so called to go to California, and I know that's where you are now. So, and so it just will always have very special place.
In your heart. Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
Totally. Yeah. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off there.
Oh no, you're fine.
LA was a hard one for me just because I'm not a person who thrives in a big city.
Same.
But Orange County, because that's where I am now, has been really very, very different. It felt a little bit more neighborhood-like and suburb. But also I think California for me as a whole, if I'm being honest, is, it's a very expensive state, high gas prices, a lot of traffic. You just have to be more intentional about what you do in this state and how you live here. But I honestly feel like my soul thrives in Europe. And that's where I've been, growing up, going back and forth, my grandparents lived there and all of that stuff. So I've been, multiple times, to France, and we've been, all that stuff in my life, but I feel like knowing the second language and doing all that, like, that's where I feel like now as a wife and as finally solidifying my business and not feeling like I have to be in that hustle culture all the time. That's what the European mentality is, and I like I did a whole podcast episode on the French American dream, because everybody wants to come here for the American dream, which you end up feeling like you're just working 24/7, survival mode, hustle culture, all that stuff. And I'm like, that's not my dream. I need to have a balance. I'm a Libra, so I need to have a balance between the two. And I love the fact that we eat for 3 hours sometimes at my grandparents' house. And can we do that all the time? No, but I love the fact that we put, emphasis on good food and good, things that nourish our body and our souls and human connection. And these are things that in the United States, it's all about work, make more money, make more connections, all that stuff. And I think there needs to be a balance between the two, because I love that lifestyle too. And and that isn't often celebrated in Europe. It's not always about work, so I love the balance between come to the United States, building an online platform so I can be location independent and really understand how to work with some of the highest level coaches in the world. And then having my environment cultivate, downtime and relaxation and taking in what I always say, living in the house you're building. Because so many people are building a house, right? A metaphorical house, which is their business or whatever it is. And they're not even living in it. They're not enjoying the present moment. They're actually just renting an Airbnb nearby. And they're like, well, we'll live in the house when it's ready, and it's never ready. Right.
Yeah.
And I think I want to be living in it right now, and we can keep renovating and evolving and growing, but I want to be enjoying it. And I think that's what, for me, what I've noticed from my dad's side of the family being full European, my mom's side being American, it's, you get that appreciation for what you're building in the moment, because that's the journey, right?
Yeah.
When we get to the destination, like then we have a new goal. So we're never
100%
appreciating it,
Yes, you are so speaking my language. I so relate to this. Like I saw growing up in my family and other people around me. Yeah. This like working at a job that you hate, to buy a house that you never live in, to buy to do, it's like, we got it all wrong. Like I want,
very
for
backwards.
me, it's like lifestyle first, joy, freedom, happiness first, and then that stuff. And I'm by nature, naturally ambitious and driven and all of that, but I'm so with you with the European vibe. Like, and also it's just, again, another parallel. My great grandmother, her side of the family is from France. So I have a lot of like French heritage. I've hosted a yoga retreat there. It's like such a sacred place to me. I love it so much.
Fabulous.
And one thing that I love about the French as well is like, I think in our society, there is just this overconsumption. We have this epidemic of obesity, or on the flip side, we see massive amounts of like eating disorders and deprivation. It's like one or the other. And I just think like the French have this beautiful way of like enjoying and indulging in like the cheese and the wine, but it's not like over consuming. It's like finding that balance. It doesn't have to be like,
well, that's the thing. And when we deprive, in the United States, it's a lot of the concept of, like you said, depriving yourself of those things so that you can reach the higher goal, lose the weight, do the whatever. And they don't deprive themselves, which means that they're not always craving it. And that's how I feel. Like we just went to a restaurant last night. That's so crazy that you say that. And we were eating around, at the Japanese steakhouses where you kind of, everyone is kind of communal. And so we start getting to know people and talking, and they find out we're athletes, and they're like, oh my gosh, so are you always on this diet? Are you always, I said, no, not at all. I don't deprive myself of anything. Now, luckily I've got, high metabolism, so I could eat cake every day and be just fine, but I don't. But that's the thing, because I don't crave it, because I allow myself to have sweets when I want to and eat the cookie and do the things, whatever. But then I'd go weeks without even eating a single dessert, because I'm like, even at a restaurant, I'm like, no, I'm good. I don't see anything I like. And that's because I will allow myself to have it, not because, I really want it and I won't eat it, so now I'm craving it. It's like, no, I just allow myself to have it, but I don't overdo it. And then as you do that, you end up going weeks without even, I haven't even craved it or even wanted it. And then when you do have it, it's so much sweeter and so much more fulfilling than when you feel like you're constantly depriving yourself of not having it.
Yeah, I totally agree. Yeah. And even in terms of like self-care or enjoying life, like I think a lot of people are like, well, when I retire, then I'll enjoy it. Or when I make this benchmark, then I'll get a massage. It's like, no, how about we like trickle that stuff in and enjoy it? Like, because when we're happy, we're vibrating at a higher frequency. That means we're more magnetic, we're more effective, we're more efficient. It's like, actually implementing things that make us happy and bring us joy are, for me, non-negotiable. I schedule it like I would a dentist appointment,
Right. Absolutely agree. Yeah, that's awesome. Cool. Well, Courtney, listen, I have one more thing to discuss with you, because your podcast is called The Unique Way. And I loved how, when I was a guest, you asked me kind of all these little fun, different things that are not often discussed that I do, maybe in my morning routine or whatever, books I've read that aren't highly, talked about. So I kind of want to like throw the question right back at you.
Yeah, I love it. So fun.
Just a couple of things that maybe, whether it be a routine thing or, a product you like to use, or something that's like very different that most people don't know about,
I'm game. Let's do it.
Yeah. So tell me what you do, and, a couple things maybe on your list that you're like, oh my gosh, this is a game changer.
Okay. Let's see. So one thing that I do that's very unique, some might even say weird. Well, I share two things, and they're called a yoga kriya, which means a cleansing practice. It's also found a lot in Ayurveda. So I don't know if your audience is into yoga or Ayurveda, but they're both like, Indian heritage. So the two things that I really love to do daily is tongue scraping and dry brushing. Okay, I'm like, high five.
Oh my God, I love
the tongue scraping is so epic. I tell people all the time about the tongue scraping and they're like, nah, I just brush my tongue. I'm like, you haven't lived until you've gotten a tongue scraper and you do that after you brush your teeth. It's like the tongue is one of the organs like that we're detoxing from. So there's bacteria, there can be film, there can be all kinds of crud on your tongue, and to just use this tongue scraper to clean. It's just the best feeling. And then the dry brush is just helping with lymphatic drainage, which I think is so important. Our lymph system does not have a drainage system. So the dry brush, you literally just brush towards the heart. So from your hands up the arms, from your feet up the legs, and you want to just get the lymph flowing. It's also very good for exfoliating. So those are two products.
Similar to like, I have the jade stones, right? The, what do they call them? You know, the
gua sha?
Yes.
Yeah, that's helpful for lymphatic drainage too, but it's different. The brush, it's actually like a coarse brush.
Okay.
And it's for your whole body, where those stones are just for the face and the neck, I think, if I know that correctly. But I love that technique also. I get a facial once a month and she does that. And I'm like, yes, it's the best.
Oh, that's so cool. Those are great. Thanks for sharing that. Yeah. The tongue scraping thing. Let me tell you something. This is the funniest part. My husband and I, same thing. He learned how to do that for me, and I buy them at the dollar store. They're so freaking cheap. It's cheap. And they're so good. And then I was like, oh, you know what? Let me just order them on Amazon. We were buying some new toothbrushes, doing all these different things. And I found them and they're not as good. I got them off Amazon and they're a little bit more expensive and they're not even as good as the ones at the dollar store. And I was like, no, you want something that's really going to work and take that bacteria off, because you're right. Brushing your tongue just doesn't do the job for me. It just doesn't.
And those both make like great stocking stuffers for those of you, like it's about to be Christmas season or the holiday season, funny. You know? So, those are two things. And then
that is so funny.
Yeah. I feel like I'm trying to think of other like resources. So, one of my favorite books is The Mastery of Love. That one is one I gift all the time. It's by Don Miguel Ruiz, who also wrote The Four Agreements, which is also a book that I feel like those two should be in everyone's library. It's Mama Gina's School of Womanly Arts. That one is amazing. And it's using the power of pleasure.
That's
and
awesome.
Then for podcasts, I love the Almost 30 podcasts. They have tons of experts in the realm of spirituality and wellness and personal development and all of that stuff. I don't know.
That's
what
great.
Else do I have? Yeah, those are some
good.
Things.
No, that's a great start. We'll put all those links in there. Cool. That's so cool. Awesome. Well, Courtney, thank you so much. This has been a really fun journey to like really dive deep into this conversation with me on your podcast and you on mine. I love doing these double features with people who have podcasts as well, because we really get to know each other and we really get to essentially continue the conversation and not feel cut short. So this has been an awesome journey. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. I have so enjoyed getting to know you. If you're ever in Charleston, don't be a stranger. It's got a very European vibe, so you might really like it here.
I've heard that. That's so awesome. Well, thank you again. Same thing. If you get yourself back to Orange County, give me a call. And we'll see everyone next week.
Cool. Sounds good. Thanks so much. Bye, guys.
Thank you so much for listening to the Recovering Perfectionist Podcast. I'm Christine, and if this episode resonated with you or spoke to you in any way, please feel free to share. I absolutely love hearing from you guys and your thoughts about the topics based on your experiences. And also, if there's anything you want me to talk about, just screenshot this episode and share it on social media with your comments. Your feedback really helps me to curate episodes that best serve you. If you have time, I would greatly appreciate if you could leave a review wherever you're listening to this episode, whether on Apple or Spotify or any other platform. I'm wishing you a blessed week ahead, and remember, perfection doesn't exist. Take messy action. Healthy habits keep us balanced, and you are enough.